The most famous violin maker lived 400 years ago named Stradivarius. And I don't think you might or may not be able to name any other violin maker except Stradivarius, right?
Right.
When you have this instrument selling for $8 million, it's not necessarily the best violin in the world, but it's a Stradivarius. So unfortunately, in about 400 years, I'm going to have to wait for that moment of my time to have that kind of recognition. But just to and I really love sharing about the historical significance of this moment. And I want to share with you, the traditional violin is this, right?
Yeah.
Not white, though. This, by the way, we built for the Dixie Chicks, and they signed it right here. But traditionally, the violin and bowed instruments have been with us for over 500 years, right? The exact same F holes, the body shape, all has not changed in 500 years. And before guitar, violin was the choice of Renaissance music and also the tradition from Beethoven and orchestras. How many oboe players and clarinet players are in an orchestra? 2. How many strings? 40. So this is the magic wand. It's called a bow. And it's amazing that we have historically had this great history of this, the traditional sense of all types of very traditional sensibility of only classical music. There was no jazz in Bach's time. And then all of a sudden, in about 100 years ago, when the blues came on, the bowed instrument was very much a part of the blues music, but they were untrained. So they played their hand position, their technique was all weird and a little out of tune, a little squeaky and scratchy, but it gave it personality. So we fast forward to the last 50 years of me going to Juilliard on a full scholarship, never graduated in high school. And my background is my mom was a concert pianist. My father is a famous artist. And she had 4 boys, and she was determined to have a string quartet. She did not like rock at all. We're talking the 60s. You remember that
right.
time.
Yeah.
Your parents and my parents, maybe I'm wrong, but that generation did not like Led Zeppelin or Ozzy Osbourne. That was the devil's music, right? Of course, I'm growing up in the 60s and 70s, and I fall in love with Black Sabbath and Zeppelin and all the great jazz stuff and fusion stuff. And my teachers, my brothers, my parents, you are not to listen to that music. That is not music, the cliche. And I'm a viola player by training, and I go to Juilliard working with the best of the best. I was mentored. In fact, one of the greatest experiences of my life as a 15-year-old was mentored by Leonard Bernstein. So here's a musician who does jazz, does the greatest musicals in the world, West Side Story, and conducts Stravinsky and Mahler. So I said, this is the guy I want to hang out with. And he shared with me something that I share with all of my lectures and concerts with. He shared with me, Mark, you know what, on my tax returns under occupation, what do you think I put? He was the greatest pianist around, the greatest conductor, the greatest composer. You know what he put? Musician. And I was like, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be a viola player, a keyboard player. I want to be a musician. And I figured out that that was really the key. So after a good year or so at Juilliard with the greatest musicians, conductors, teachers, and my teacher would mark, where were you last night? And if you remember, a club in New York called CBGB.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Where I saw the Police, Talking Heads, the Sex Pistols, Patti Smith, the Ramones at CBGB's. This is not Juilliard material. And my ears were blown out. I would go next day to orchestra, and my teacher, where were you last night? I was like, I was listening to, what? You're listening to that horrible music, Mark. It will ruin your career. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but I really love that. But I also love Stravinsky, Mahler, Beethoven, Bartok. I love all music. And that's the definition of a musician. And that was that turning point where I left Juilliard, and everyone, my mother, my relatives, my brothers, the teachers were, Mark, it's never been done. What are you going to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a rock violin. What? A rock violin player? There's no such thing. Except maybe Jean-Luc Ponty and Sugarcane Harris, who I adored. But they didn't know those people. There were three great electric violin players. How many electric guitar players in the 60s and 70s were there?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Thousands. And I would see Jimmy Page and Hendrix and Van Halen. I was like, and they were like, Mark, just play guitar. I said, I am not playing guitar because guitars do not have this horsehair on a bow. So that was really the changing point.